Your Honor, we may start when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Click here. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to round one of the 2022 Denver Regional Mock Trial Tournament for Colorado high schools. My name is David Arkell, and I see my name. I have an honorable, which normally would mean I'm a real judge, but I'm not. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a judge, except this time of year. I'm a practicing attorney, and I do this as a volunteer, and I've been doing it probably for about 15 years after spending a couple of years as a coach at my son's high school when he was on the team. And I enjoy doing this, and I really hope that all of the students have enjoyed it. I remember how hard of work it was for everybody involved, but it's a great program. It's worth the blood, sweat, and tears, and I hope a lot of laughs during the process. I have to go through a checklist of further things. It's modified a little bit because of the Zoom platform that we're on, but I'll get through that as quickly as I can, and then we'll get started in the real stuff. First of all, would everybody, I think this is already the case, but everybody who is not a participant now, turn off your audio and video. If there are any that still have that on, any that would be at a live presentation would be sitting in the gallery, essentially. Coaches, parents, other family members, teachers, etc. Please do that. I think you can skip a lot of this. I need to remind you that pay attention to the time limits for each side, each phase of this. The scoring panelists, if you go over, the scoring panelists have the option to score you down for that. So listen to your timers, pay attention to your timers, and if they say stop, stop. Wherever you are, mid-syllable, just complete your presentation. Well, let's go ahead now, and I'll swear you in, and I think we can just do that, not going through chat or anything else. But I'd like, first of all, the team members, please raise your right hands. And for those that are still blank, I'll believe you if you tell me your right hand is raised. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of mock trial competition? Okay, thank you. Gallery members, and here you don't have to turn on your cameras or anything else. I'll take it on faith, but virtually raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Okay, thank you. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. You promise to adjudicate this mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition. Okay, thank
Your
you.
Honor, I think we'd like Brittany and Emma to turn on their cameras to be sworn in at this time.
Okay, did you just arrive? Okay, did you hear me give the oath? Okay, all right, you both raised your hands and you both nodded your head, so you're all okay, including Elizabeth, our second string panel, scoring panelist, I guess. Okay, witnesses, please, each of you raise your right hands. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts, procedures, and rules of a mock trial competition? Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to get it on after I ask if anybody has any pretrial matters to bring before the court before we commence.
Yes, Your Honor, we have a couple.
Please proceed.
We are going to be screen sharing exhibits, and we ask that once they are screen shared, they be considered constructively admitted to the jury or constructively published to the jury. We also ask that we can confirm before we start that all jury members have a copy of all of the exhibits, as do all members of the opposing party, just so we can make sure that they have copies. And if we have any issues with screen sharing, it's not a problem for any of us. And then finally, we ask that any time that is left on closing be reserved for a brief rebuttal.
Does the defense have any response to any of those three requests?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, it will be ordered. Do, in response to the second one, do all of both teams have copies of all of the exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense does.
Okay, and I presume plaintiff does as well.
That we do, Your Honor.
Okay, and I do also. I've got copies of my own. And the screen share, upon my allowing an exhibit to be admitted, screen share will be presumptively the equivalent of publication of the exhibits.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else from plaintiffs?
Nothing else from us, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Defense?
The only additional pretrial matter is that we ask to remain seated during openings and closings.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Apologies, I'm not sure if the plaintiff is attempting to add more. I can let them go.
Excuse us, Your Honor. Due to some technical difficulties, we will not be able to screen share currently. Where some of our computers were malfunctioning and we couldn't get enough computers to do the job.
Okay, you're with the plaintiff?
They are, Your Honor. Sorry, that's my bad. As I'm not currently with my fellow teammates at school, I was unaware that they were having tech issues. So I assume that we can not screen share the exhibits and assume that as we're reading them, everybody else has copies.
Okay, but I would, in that case, I would like you to at least ask permission to publish the exhibits, even though you won't be able to even constructively publish them because of the glitch in the screen sharing process. But go ahead and just for the scoring panelist benefit, jump through that hoop of asking permission to publish them after I admit them.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can do.
Okay. And defense, I don't think you got to restate your preliminary matter.
Yes, Your Honor. We just asked to remain seated during openings and closings.
Any objection from the plaintiff?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so ordered. I have a couple of things. Some of it is just the way I like to do it. One is that, and this is as much for the scoring panelists as it is for the attorneys and witnesses. I will pause briefly at several times, maybe many times during the course of the proceedings, so that I will give the scoring panelists time to be sure that they are up to date with their scoring process. As we heard during our orientation, it's important, even critical, that the scoring panelists stay current on their scorekeeping. And so between witnesses and occasionally between direct and cross, or maybe between cross and redirect, I will pause for probably less than a minute or so to give the panelists time to assure that they're current. For timekeepers, that time should not be charged to either party. But I think that's a really important part of this, that they need to stay current, because they're maybe after the students themselves, they're probably the most important component of this process. Okay, I think the others, all that I would usually give, all apply to live presentations. So is there anything else? Did my preliminary matters, do they elicit any further preliminary matters from either plaintiff or defense?
Nothing else from us, Your Honor.
Nothing else from us either, Your Honor.
Okay, are the parties ready to proceed?
That we are.
Okay, please proceed with opening.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may. I'm not getting any audio. You're on mute.
My apologies. My apologies.
Okay,
Profits,
please proceed.
profits over people. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today because of the negligence of Lush Fertilizer. Today we have the burden of proof to prove three things. One, that Lush Fertilizers was negligent about their product. Two, that their product had real damages. And three, that those damages had cause on my client Dakota Weirs in the form of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. You see, my client Dakota Weirs was an aspiring young pianist. She not only started at the age of 7, but also continued throughout junior high and high school, getting awards and winning scholarships for the most prestigious art school in the country, Juilliard. She could have made it big time if it wasn't for the negligence of Lush Fertilizer and the cause of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. You see, today she's not even able to sit on a piano bench for the length of the song without it hurting, or breathe properly without it inflaming her lungs. And it hurts to just play the keys because of the arthritis in her fingers. Because Lush Fertilizer valued the profits over their people, it's ruined Dakota Weir's life. You will also hear from Carson Durst. Carson Durst was a researcher for Lush Fertilizer for some time. Her job was to research the product and report back to Lush if she found anything, which she did. She found that Drupal could potentially be harmful, Drupal being a chemical in Lush Fertilizer. With this information, she emailed it to the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, and when they performed tests that came back potential for being a carcinogenic, Lush Fertilizer pushed it under a rug. They did not care about the harm that it could cause on their people because they were only worried about the profit. They could not sacrifice a mere 10% of their net worth to eliminate all this risk and save lives. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, who performed a series of tests to find a link between non-Hodgkin lymphoma and Drupal. What you'll hear from Mr. Rogers is that these tests came back positive, showing that there is definitely a link between non-Hodgkin lymphoma and Drupal, making it undeniable that this product was harmful and is harmful. You see, today you'll hear from defense. You'll hear from the CEO of Lush Fertilizer claiming that she never knew about the harm of Lush Fertilizer, which you will hear that there was an email sent out and that the tests did come back inconclusive to the point where they should have performed more tests. You'll also hear from Skylar Weirs, Dakota's twin sister, and you'll hear that she has everything to gain from Lush Fertilizer winning this trial and everything to lose from them not winning. You see, Lush Fertilizer has exhibited a pattern of profits over people, valuing their money over the livelihood of their customers. So we ask you today to rule in favor of my client, Dakota Weirs, and hold Lush Fertilizer accountable for their negligence. Thank you.
Defense, an opening statement.
Your Honor and members of the jury, please allow me to address you on behalf of Lush Fertilizer. Lush Fertilizer is a company that has been built by Blake Doncourt brick by brick since 2000. The company has a history of happy customers. It's used by businesses, governments, and everyday people. And through the success and power that came with being the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, Blake Doncourt has been a huge activist for climate change. He has directed 10% of Lush Fertilizer's annual profits to charities working to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint. The company has advocated for creating state and national legislation to educate on environmental issues, and they have a charity that focuses on cleaning pollution in oceans. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me ask you a question. Why would a company that cares so deeply and puts so much into helping the environment ignore a known carcinogen in their own product? Today, you will hear from Blake Doncourt. Blake Doncourt will expand on how their team at Lush Fertilizer has helped the climate and testing put into Drupal before it hit the markets. Next, you will hear from Skylar Weirs, an investigative journalist. They will explain to you why scientific skepticism is such an important thing, how Drupal keeps people safe, their relationship with their twin sibling, Dakota Weirs, and how New Haven Landscaping is the real company at fault. Lastly, you will hear from Dr. Devin Williams, who will tell us what Drupal is, what eutrophication is, and how environmentally sustainable and safe for humans Drupal is. You will also hear from Dakota Weirs, who was sadly diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She believes Drupal and Lush Fertilizer was the cause for her disease. In reality, New Haven Landscaping's negligence in implementing safety precautions is the real one at fault. Today, Your Honor and members of the jury, you will come to understand that Drupal and Lush Fertilizer is not to blame for Dakota's illness. New Haven Landscaping knew that there were proper precautions on the back of the packaging in order to protect yourself while using the product, and allowed 14-year-old Dakota Weirs to use fertilizer in casual clothing. With all this being said, at the end of the trial, we will ask you to make a verdict that will not unrightfully destroy the reputation of an ethical and safe fertilizer and a company owner that cares so deeply about the environment at the hands of disreputable science. Thank you.
Hey, plaintiff, please call your first witness.
Your Honor, plaintiff calls Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Ms. Weirs, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, you have previously been sworn. Please proceed.
One moment, Your Honor.
Hi, Your Honor. Our computer just died, actually. So, yeah, so if it's okay, we could.
You want to both
We
appear
could
on the,
try
I
and
can see
do
you,
it.
I can see you both now.
Okay.
Let me ask,
Go ahead, sorry.
let me ask, are you comfortable without your masks being that close? It's, you know, I'm a good distance away, but I will give you the option to wear masks if you would prefer in this circumstance.
We are comfortable with it, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, can you please state and spell your name for the court? Yes, my name is Dakota Weirs. Last name is spelled W-E-I-R-S. And why are you here today, Ms. Weirs? I'm here because I use Lush Fertilizer. Ms. Weirs, did you attend high school?
Excuse me, I missed almost all of that last answer. The sound, the audio was cutting in and out. Is anybody else having that problem? Okay. Is there anything you can do? I suspect it's at your end at the school.
Yes, we apologize, Your Honor. Our school Wi-Fi and computers are really bad.
Okay,
Your Honor, if the audio issues continue, we can have the participants dial in using their cell phones and they can keep their cameras on.
Okay, well, let's start over. Most of that first exchange was lost. Why don't
Of
you
course.
start over and timekeepers, start over again with your timers where we were previously with the attorney.
Of course, Your Honor. I apologize. My attorney, apparently their computer was fixed, so she is running back over to the other room and they will be in momentarily.
Okay.
Yes,
Why
they are
don't-
online.
Be clearly, Your Honor?
I heard a little bit and then you cut out.
I was just asking if you could see and hear me clearly.
That was a little better, yes. So let's try it. Go ahead, ask your
Is this
question.
any better?
That's probably, yeah, it sounds a little better. We'll find out. Go ahead and ask your first question over again.
All right, I'm so sorry about this, Your Honor.
I'm sure it's not your fault. Let's make the best of it.
Ms. Weirs, can you please state and spell your name for the court?
Of course, my name is Dakota Weirs and last name is spelled W-E-I-R-S.
And why are you here today, Ms. Weirs?
I'm here because I used Lush Fertilizer and now I'm sick.
Ms. Weirs, did you attend high school?
Yes, I graduated from high school.
And how were you as a student?
As a student, I was a really good student, actually. I got really good grades. I was the president of our student body, our student government, and I was involved in our NHS. And then I also volunteered outside of school and had a job. I played piano. I did a lot of things.
Where did you volunteer?
I volunteered at a homeless shelter I would cook, basically help the less fortunate of our community.
And you say you played piano. What got you into piano?
Yeah, piano was the greatest passion of my life. My greatest inspiration was actually my grandfather, who he passed away a while ago, but I always remember he looked so big just playing the piano, and it really inspired me. And he was an accomplished piano player himself, so I wanted to be just like him.
And when did you begin playing piano? Taking lessons?
Well, I was interested in piano as little as I could remember. I was pressing on the little pedals when I was a baby, but I officially started lessons shortly after my grandfather died, which was when I was 7 years old.
And what was your piano career like throughout high school?
I was really good. I participated in many recitals and competitions, and I even won some of those competitions. And I was even offered many scholarships, including a scholarship to Juilliard. I mean, can you believe that? But I had to defer my time there.
Why did you have to defer your time at Juilliard?
I had to defer my time because of my sickness. I can't even play piano anymore.
Why not?
It simply hurts too much to sit on the bench, and I can't move my fingers and my swollen lymph nodes. It's just painful overall.
Is it permanent?
Well, the doctors are hopeful that it's not, but you never know. It can be, and it's really scary.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you said you had a job. What was that job?
I worked at Haven Landscaping. Mainly, I was spreading seed and fertilizer for the company.
What fertilizers did you work with?
I remember using many fertilizers, but I remember using Lush fertilizer for at least 3 to 4 years.
And which fertilizer did you use primarily?
Lush fertilizer.
And why are you suing Lush Fertilizer today?
Well, I was actually in one of my states of depression one day, and I was watching the news and I saw something that said that Lush was using a product that called Drupal that causes non-Hodgkins.
Objection, Your Honor. That was hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is just effect on the listener. It's an exception to hearsay. It's not going to prove the true or falsity of this statement, that is that Drupal causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She is simply just stating why we are here today.
Reply?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled. Please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, just to restate that question, why are you here today suing Lush Fertilizer?
As I said, I was in a state of depression. I was watching the news and I saw an article saying that Lush fertilizer uses a product that causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember using the product at my job at Haven Landscaping.
When you used this product, did you look at the labels?
Yes, of course I did.
And when you read these labels, were there any warnings on them?
Not for Lush's label, no. Not any ones that stuck out.
And if you were to see this label today in court, would you be able to recognize it?
Yes, I would.
Sorry. Your Honor, at this time, let the record reflect. I am showing what is the jury and yourself.
I'm sorry, your audio cut out. Which exhibit?
Exhibit 1.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Weirs, can you see Exhibit 1?
Yes, I do. I have it in front of me.
What is in front of you?
I have a Lush Fertilizers label.
How do you know?
Because I use the product when I worked with it and it says Lush Fertilizer.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence, as it is a fair and unmarked copy of Exhibit 1.
Response?
No, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted for all purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, can you please read under ingredients?
Under ingredients, it says Drupal, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, iron, that's 48.6%. And other ingredients are 51.4%.
And what chemicals specifically stick out to you in this?
I mean, it's interesting that they use Drupal. They don't, not a lot of other Not any other fertilizer uses that.
Any other chemicals?
The others are regular in the fertilizers I use, just Drupal stands out.
And can you please read under the first 2 lines under user safety recommendations?
It says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin, and use of a respirator and N95 mask is recommended.
And what stands out to you in this statement?
That they only recommend the things.
And did you adhere to these recommendations?
No, because they're recommendations. If there are requirements or warnings or anything else, I would have listened.
Now, what were the working conditions like at Lush when working with Lush Fertilizer?
I remember it being really hot all the time. So wearing like a mask, long sleeves, it was just harder to work really. And it was hot. And if I'm being honest, the wind felt nice, especially in those conditions.
And on this label, do you see any warnings?
I see recommendations, but no warnings.
And Ms. Weirs, if you were to make this label, would you have put a warning?
Yes, I would have. If it's dangerous, and I would have put a warning on even just in case.
No further questions, John.
Cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor.
please proceed.
Right. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to start by discussing your initial contact with Lush Fertilizer. You started using Lush Fertilizer at your job at Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I started working there when I was 14.
Okay, so you were a child when you started working there, right?
I was a teenager, yes.
Okay. And during your time at Haven Landscaping, you used multiple fertilizers, right?
Yes, but I primarily remember using Lush Fertilizer for many years.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have permission to display on my screen Exhibit 1?
You may.
All right. This is the label of Lush Fertilizer that you worked with, correct?
Yes, this is the label I just went over.
Okay. And under hazards, do you see the line that says keep out of reach of children?
Yes, that's usually like children under 10, not children that are working with the product.
Being 14 is being a child, correct?
I was a teenager. I was allowed to work.
Okay, I'm not asking if you're allowed to work. I'm saying that you were a child when you worked with the product, right?
I was 14. I was a teenager, already in high school.
Okay, all right. Does it specify that teenagers are not included within this use of children under hazards?
They're children, but I imagine that you wouldn't let like a 3-year-old or anything when
Okay.
I imagine that if they let me work there, then I wouldn't be able to use the product.
Okay. All right. And then under user safety recommendations, it says to utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin, correct?
Yes, under the recommendations.
All right. It also says to use a respirator or an N95 mask.
That is recommended, yes.
Okay. And it says that users should wash hands before and after the use of the product, correct?
Yes, as with any fertilizer.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. So when you were working with Lush Fertilizer, did you wear short sleeves?
I did. It was just so hot.
Okay. And you also wore shorts?
Yes, that is correct.
So you did not wear protective clothing when you were working with the product?
I didn't, because I didn't think that the product was dangerous enough to harm me.
Okay. And you also did not wear any gloves?
No, because it didn't warn me to.
Okay. And you didn't wear a mask, correct?
No, because like I said, it was only recommended.
Okay. It's rational for Lush Fertilizer to assume that their users would follow recommendations, correct?
Well, when they put the word recommendation, it's a little different from the word required. When there's, as experience with my other fertilizers I use, they say that it's required or that it's essential, or they warn us to wear clothing, which I would do, or only to use them outdoors.
Okay, but you didn't wear the protective clothing that was recommended by Lush Fertilizer, right?
No, because it didn't seem like it was dangerous enough, which it is.
Okay, and you said the reason for not wearing the protective clothing was not because it wasn't dangerous. You said it was because you like to feel the breeze on your skin, right?
It is both. I
Okay.
like to feel the breeze on my skin. I admit that, but it's also because they didn't, why would I wear clothing when it's first of all hot, and also when they don't require me to?
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Virtually. Plaintiff, please call your next witness.
Permission to call Carson Durst to the stand?
You may, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yes, Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
And Ms. Durst, can you tell me a little bit about your educational background?
Yeah, so I got my chemical engineering my bachelor's in chemical engineering, at Arizona State University.
And do you have any professional experience?
Yes, straight out of college, I've been working in the fertilizer field. So I've been working in the fertilizer field for about almost 2 decades.
How'd you manage to swing a position like that straight out of college?
Well, I used to be best friends with Charles Duncourt, Blake Duncourt's the CEO of Lush Fertilizer's son. We used to be best friends. I was very close with the family. I considered them a second family, really. And because Blake knew me, he knew my work ethic, he knew how good of a person I was, he was able to get me a job at his company.
Do you still work at Lush?
I do not work at Lush anymore.
Where do you work now?
I am the lead product developer for Terry's Greenery.
Did you transition straight from Lush to Terrace?
No, there was a slight legal battle, and so I had to wait 6 months before starting work at Terra's.
Why was there a legal battle?
While I was working at Lush, I forgot I had signed a non-compete and non-disclosure agreement, so there was a legal battle because of that.
Did you, aside from the whole legal battle, did you have any other problems leaving Lush?
Yes, so I was actually fired from Lush, and even before that, I was already planning on leaving the company because of some coworkers, you could say.
I'm sorry, what was that about your coworkers? Your audio cut out there.
Oh, I'm sorry, that there was some tensions between us.
What do you mean by tensions?
because I was so close with Blake Duncourt, they had believed I was just skating by, and none of my promotions really meant anything. They just thought I got my promotions because of Blake Duncourt, but in reality, it's hard work.
I'm sorry, Mr. Can I repeat the question? Your audio cut out there again. All right. Can you tell us what you mean by tensions with your coworkers?
Yes, so by tensions, I mean that
Have we lost both of you?
I am not quite sure, to be completely honest, Your Honor. Would you mind if we took just a moment to make sure that we can get that camera going?
Not at all. That's doable.
Thank you, Your Honor. We will try and fix it. And thank you so much for bearing with us through these tech issues.
Iris, can you hear us?
That we can.
And can Iris hear us? It looks like she can't hear us.
yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're having some very poor network quality. What I recommend is trying to remain still and speaking slowly and clearly. If that doesn't resolve the issue, you can try logging off and back in. If that doesn't resolve the issue, we can try connecting you with a cell phone.
All right.
Would you mind if I asked a quick favor? Could you put that dial-in number in the chat one more time so that we can have our witnesses use it while they stay on camera?
Yes, I'll repaste it for you.
Ready. Thank you so much.
I think the quality looks okay for now. I think we should proceed when you're ready.
Mr. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Alrighty. Your Honor, would you mind if I repeated the last couple questions since it's been a minute since we got to hear the answers?
Please do so. And for timekeeping purposes, I guess add maybe a minute back on to the time for this phase of the proceeding.
Alrighty. Ms. Durst, do you still work at Lush Fertilizer?
No, I do not. I work at Terrace Greenery.
And did you transition directly from Lush to Terrace?
There was actually a 6-month battle between, legal battle, sorry, between me and Lush Fertilizer. So I had to wait 6 months until I could start working at Terrace Greenery.
Why was there a legal battle?
Well, while I was working at Lush, I had forgotten that I had signed a non-compete and non-disclosure agreement.
And was that legal battle the only trouble that you had leaving Lush?
Well, I was actually fired from my job at Lush, but even before then, I was already looking for a new job because there was tensions between me and my coworkers.
What do you mean by tensions?
Well, because of my close relationship with Blake Duncourt, they believed that I was just skating by and got my promotions solely because of my connection with Blake. But that's not true. All of the promotions that I got was because of my own hard work and because I was just performing at a higher level.
May I ask, what was your position at Lush Fertilizer?
Yeah, so I was, I started off as an intern, but then I got into the research and development specifically for Drupal.
Said that you were a researcher. Let's talk for a minute about why you got fired. Did you discover anything in that position as a researcher that was potentially detrimental to the company?
Yes, so as I said, it was my job to do research and I had to put all my findings in a journal. Had to go search for them, obviously, to put all my concerns in the journal. And I came across a study that suggested that Drupal may have been carcinogenic. So I thought I should put that down in my journal so they could try to see if it is carcinogenic and fix it.
And what's generally the procedure after a researcher puts something in their journal like this?
Yeah, so after we put something in our journal, it is supposed to be reviewed by the product manager. At the time, my product manager was Jerry Langley, and she was supposed to summarize everything and then send it up to senior management.
In this case, do you believe that this particular bit of information was relayed to senior management?
I actually know that it was relayed to senior management because there was an email a few months afterwards that was sent to us describing the parameters of a study that was being done to see if Drupal was carcinogenic.
Were you privy to the results of the study?
Yes, there was actually a meeting where all the scientists, researchers, even a member of upper management came together to discuss the findings.
And what were those findings?
Well, while I was in the meeting, there was a scientist and they expressed some concern that Drupal may not only be carcinogenic, but linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I'm sorry, was there an objection?
Objection hearsay.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Yes, absolutely. This is a statement made by a party opponent. The statement about, I assume what opposing counsel was objecting to was the statement made by an employee of Lush. However, they are an employee of Lush and that company is represented here today.
Reply.
No response, Your Honor.
Overruled.
All right.
Please proceed.
Do you mind if I repeat the question, Your Honor?
Please do so.
Were you privy to the results of these findings? And if so, what were they?
Yes, so there was a meeting to discuss all the results where upper management, scientists, researchers, we were all there. And one of the scientists had expressed their concern that Drupal may not only be carcinogenic, but linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What was the reaction from upper management?
They just said to keep it in the walls.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Durst. Let's talk about Lush. You grew up best friends with the son of Blake Doncourt, didn't you?
Yes, as I said before.
And you both went to Arizona State University?
Yeah.
You did well enough in school, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
You did well enough in school, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you got your internship at Lush straight out of college?
Yeah, because Blake knew me as a person and he knew I would do good in the job.
Okay. Well, it's my understanding you got the opportunity because you were complaining to Blake Doncourt's son, correct?
I wasn't complaining. I never had any intention of working at Lush.
No? Okay, let's move on. The biggest assignment you got from the company was working on Drupal?
Yes.
And you were given the task of researching a specific chemical compound, right?
Yes.
The research was reviewed regularly, correct?
Yes, by Jerry Langley.
Okay. And they were compiled into a series of reports that was given to senior management, correct?
Yep.
So you couldn't know what those higher ups were speaking about as an intern, right?
I couldn't have known, but there was the email sent saying that there was going to be a study done. So I know that they had read my report.
Okay. Well, in your witness statement, you also mentioned the falsities in the final report of the study of Drupal, correct?
Yes, it's very common in big corporations to get a certain result out of the company.
Okay. You didn't have much access to the data analyzed by members of the research and development team, right?
No, but when the scientists expressed their concern that Drufo may be carcinogenic, it meant something to me.
Okay. Well, is it safe to say all of your theories that go further than research are technically speculative?
No, it's just common knowledge in companies, not only Lush. It's a practice that a lot of companies use.
No. Okay, well, let's move on. At some point within your employment, you started getting bad performance reviews that you believe were unfair.
Yes, as I mentioned before, it was because of the tensions.
Okay.
People believe that I only had gotten my promotion so quickly because of Blake, but as I said, that's not true. It was my own hard work.
Okay. And the times you asked Blake Doncourt, they didn't intervene, correct?
They helped me everything myself.
Miss Doncourt, you were cutting out. Can you repeat the answer?
Sorry. I started getting the question.
You're still cutting out a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit.
I'm not getting any of it. Any of the answers.
Can I have a few moments?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
All right, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. And the times you asked Blake Doncourt, they didn't intervene, correct?
Yes, as I said, they never helped me in the company. Everything I did was my own work.
Okay. So eventually, in search for a new job, you applied to Terra's Greenery.
That is true.
Did you signed a confidentiality agreement while at Lush Fertilizer, right?
Yes, but I had forgotten about it.
Well, isn't Terra's Greenery one of Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitors?
Yes, I thought it would only make sense for me to continue working in the fertilizer industry since I had already had experience.
Sure. But you're eventually able to work at Terra's Greenery.
Yes.
And you've been working on a new product?
Yes, we have.
And the projections of this new product could outsell Lush Fertilizer, right?
Maybe, I'm not too entirely sure.
Okay, well, no further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Please call your next witness.
Plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Rogers, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, could you please state your name and spell out your last name for the court?
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And Dr. Rogers, what do you do for a living?
I am a professor at Berkeley in the horticulture department.
And what kind of, did you have any previous occupations before being a professor?
Yes, I used to do studies on chemicals that I found suspicious or I found that needed further investigation.
And Dr. Rogers, have you done any publications?
Yes, I've done several publications about primarily the Drupal compound and like its effects on other substances, weeds, and humans and other things, of course.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in entomology and horticulture, as well as the effects of chemicals on human beings, as he has shown the requisite knowledge, skills, and experience to do so.
Okay. Entomology, and give me that again.
Entomology, horticulture, and the effects of chemicals on the human body.
Okay, thank you. Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, lack of foundation. Opposing counsel has not provided the requisite foundation about the witness's education, which is required under the rule for expert testimony.
Reply.
Your Honor, Dr. Casey Rogers has shown that he has a large amount of experience in researching chemicals. He is also currently a professor at a university teaching entomology and horticulture. And he also has done multiple publications proving his skills and experience within the field.
The objection is overruled. I find that the background of this witness is sufficient such that he can be, he is qualified to provide opinion evidence under Rule 702. And counsel, if you wish to go into his background more, you can do that on cross-examination. And the jury, it'll be up to the jury to determine the credibility of his testimony. So it's overruled. This witness is admitted as or qualified as an expert in entomology, horticulture, and the effects of chemicals on human beings. Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, could you start off by explaining what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a type of cancer that affects the immune system and thus the lymphomic system. And basically it spreads throughout the lymphomic system and throughout the body, killing and mutating cells.
And Dr. Rogers, moving on, could you please explain to us what Drupal is?
Drupal is a bonding agent was created for the fertilizer so that it can help the fertilizer stay preserved and intact and keep it from backwashing off of the plant.
And Dr. Rogers, what first caught your attention about this chemical Drupal?
I believe that the Drupal compound was rushed way too early to the market, and then it needed some more studies on its safety and other effects.
And Dr. Rogers, do you seek to be to continue litigation against Drupal?
Yes, I plan, depending on the outcome of this case, on doing further litigation against the Drupal and the Lush company to ban the Drupal compound. That way, more people won't have to go through what Dakota Wheels is.
And Dr. Rogers, have you done any studies recently on the chemical Drupal?
I haven't done any in the past year, but I have done about 2 or so years ago studies pertaining to its effects on the human body and other various things.
Dr. Rogers, could you please explain to us what this study entailed?
In the study, we had 3 different groups: a control group with people who've never been exposed to Drupal, a group that only basically use Drupal every now and then, and people who use Drupal on a day-to-day basis, such as farmers and other workers.
And Dr. Rogers, were you able to isolate Drupal within these groups?
Based off of the kind of study we conducted, we did the best we could to seclude make sure that a majority of them were using the Drupal compound.
And Dr. Rogers, what kind of results did you get out of this study?
Well, we found that people who were exposed to Drupal on a day-to-day basis were 15 times more likely to receive cancer than people who have never been exposed to Drupal. And that people who are only exposed to Drupal every now and then are 10 times more likely to receive cancer than people who haven't been exposed to Drupal.
And how do these groups, and Dr. Casey Rogers, have you reviewed Ms. Dakota Weirs' case?
Yes, I have reviewed his case and his medical records, and they do match the people who we have seen in our experiment that have been affected by Drupal and have gotten cancer.
And Dr. Rogers, comparing Dakota Weirs' case to the results you got from the study, what can you tell us about Ms. Weirs' illness?
Well, I pity her, as it does match out other results. And while I'm entirely not sure if she will make it or not, it does seem very severe.
So, Dr. Rogers, do you believe that the compound Drupal caused Ms. Weirs' illness?
In my expert opinion, and after conducting my study and looking at her records, yes, I believe that Drupal did cause her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. I'd like to begin by discussing your motivation for your involvement in today's case. This is your first time testifying as an expert witness, correct?
That is indeed correct.
And your research, or your study on Drupal rather, is being used in this case?
Yes, that is correct.
And you expect that class action lawsuits will follow this case?
Yes, to get rid of the Drupal compound.
And you hope that to testify as an expert in those cases as well?
Based off of my experience with the Drupal compounds, yes.
Because your testimony today will put you on the map, correct?
And it will also help people from experiencing what Dakota Wheels is experiencing.
For the record, is that a yes to my question?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to now discuss your specific study on Drupal. You've conducted your own study on the purportedly adverse effects of the Drupal chemical, correct?
That is indeed true.
And what's the process for getting scientific results of a study published?
Can you please elaborate?
Sure. So these results of your study, the process for publishing them would include collaborating with some publishing entity, correct?
That is true.
It would include peer reviewing of those results before publication, correct?
In some cases, that is true.
And it would include replication of these results by other researchers, correct?
Depending on the study and various conditions, that sometimes can happen.
Okay, and this study of yours was conducted independently of your place of work, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You conducted it on your own exclusively.
Yes, I thought that the Drupal compound was washed, so I experienced. So I did the study on it.
And you claim that your study revealed the negative effects of the Drupal chemical, but you never published these findings, did you?
No, I did not. I never got to finish the study.
And the findings they were never peer reviewed.
Yes, they weren't peer reviewed yet, as they were, in relative terms, very recent.
And they've never been replicated because they're so recent.
Yes, as I said, because since they're relatively new studies, they haven't been replicated by any other scientists.
And you didn't disclose the purported results of this study to anyone else prior to your testimony today, have you?
No, I did not.
Okay, so let's move on to the design of your study. The study compared farm laborers, gardeners, and people who didn't do either of those things.
That is true.
And among the farm laborers, you didn't ensure that the Drupal fertilizer was the only agricultural product they were using.
Based on the study that I conducted, I did the best I could to make sure a majority of what they were using was the Drupal compound.
But you weren't able to isolate this variable specifically, were you?
No, I was not 100% able to.
And you didn't select participants with similar lifestyles outside of their jobs, correct?
No, we tried to do it based off of their current lifestyle, how much they would be using Drupal.
And you didn't select participants from a group of already healthy people?
We did our best. I did my best to make sure that I got a wide variety of people involved.
So you didn't control for pre-existing conditions among the participants?
No.
And you didn't control for any sort of genetic predispositions among the participants?
Well, we didn't find, we didn't. And as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and some other cancers are not genetically related, it's not a direct correlation.
Okay, and lastly, your study claims to have found a correlation between exposure to Drupal and cancer diagnosis.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is everyone able to hear me? Sorry. Okay.
I heard your question, yes.
I'll repeat the question. Your study claims to have found a correlation between exposure to Drupal and cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
But this doesn't suggest specific causation, correct?
That is indeed correct.
Okay, and let's lastly discuss the purported effects of exposure to Drupal. You claim that exposure to Drupal is correlated with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes.
You're familiar with the sickness?
Yes, I am.
And the sickness is usually caused by exposure to something in the environment?
Yes, such as Drupal.
Okay, and it includes exposure to pesticides?
Yes.
And most of this exposure occurs by breathing in the chemicals?
Yes, that is one of the main ways that people do get exposed to it.
And it can also be caused by contact with the skin?
Yes.
So because of this, you recommend that people wear protective gear while working with chemicals?
While the study wasn't completely conclusive, I believe that it may help in like preventing cancers and other effects
And
of the Drupal compound.
that includes wearing long sleeves,
Yes.
and that includes wearing a medical grade mask.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
A redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, how strong was the correlation that you found in your study?
We found that it was extremely strong in the study I conducted.
And what does a strong correlation suggest about your results?
That Drupal most likely does cause cancer in the people who are exposed to it.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Thank you. Defense, please call your first witness.
The defense calls Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Ms. Doncourt, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Doncourt. Can you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yes, my name is Blake Doncourt. That's Doncourt.
Thank you. What do you do for a living?
I am the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer. It's a company that I started in 2000.
What does your company sell?
We sell yard and commercial fertilizers.
And has Lush been successful as a company?
Yes, actually, we are the world's largest supplier of fertilizers. We're able to direct 10% of our annual profits towards charity.
What charities do you donate to?
We mainly donate to charities that are focused on reducing the world's nitrogen footprint. We've even been fortunate enough to start our own charity that focuses on cleaning polluted areas of the ocean.
Has the company gotten any recognition for their work?
Yes, we have. In 2019, Lush was one of the recipients of the Seal Business Sustainability Awards, and I was personally nominated for the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award in 2020.
All right, let's move on to today's case. What brings you here today?
Sadly, Lush and I are being falsely accused of ignoring a carcinogen in our fertilizer.
And what is the alleged carcinogen in question?
Drufo, a bonding agent in the fertilizer, is being linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm deeply sorry for plaintiff Dakota Weirs, but it is simply not because of Lush's fertilizer.
Why do you believe Dakota's disease wasn't caused by Lush fertilizer?
Well, Dakota worked with multiple fertilizers and lawn chemicals for years when they were working as landscaper. We don't know what these chemicals were, but they could have been easily linked to her disease. The primary reason I'm saying this, however, is that Lush is not correlated with an increased risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Did you perform research and testing on the fertilizers before putting them on the market?
We absolutely did. We performed extensive research and testing, and we did not identify it as a specific risk. People coming into contact with the fertilizer. The toxicology research and development team, and along with the EPA, found nothing in the product to require a warning on the packaging.
Now, Lush doesn't bake its fertilizer. Why is that?
The purpose of baking a fertilizer is to remove any risk that's carcinogenic, but with Lush fertilizer, there wasn't any risk in the first place. Our extensive research did not identify this as a risk to persons coming into contact with our fertilizer.
Have there been any studies that show Drupal was carcinogenic in humans?
The only study that was done by Casey Rogers, who was hired by the plaintiff. It was never even published in a scientific journal.
Has anyone besides Casey Rogers made those claims?
Yes, Carson Durst. They used to work for Lush and only ever raised any concern about the product after they were working for Lush's biggest competitor, Terrace Greenery.
Did Carson ever mention anything to you about Drupal being dangerous?
Not once, and that was his job, was to look for dangers and risks that were associated with the product, and I never heard anything from them about this.
When did Carson leave the company?
They left after getting a more lucrative deal from Terrace Greenery.
And if there was a verifiable risk that Drupal was carcinogenic, would you have put it on the market?
No, I would have never done that.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please
Ms.
proceed.
Ms. Doncourt, Lush Fertilizer is a for-profit company, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you take profit into account when making decisions in your company, correct?
Of course, as any business does.
And when looking at profit, you create profit reports, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
When looking at profits, you create profit reports, correct?
Yes.
And you created a profit report for baking, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And if I were to show you, one of these, the profit report you created for baking, you would recognize it, correct?
I would.
Let the record reflect that I am showing opposing counsel, Ms. Doncourt, and the members of the jury, what is an unmarked copy of Exhibit 8. Ms. Doncourt, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And Your Honor, let the record reflect that I am admitting Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Are you requesting that it be admitted into evidence?
I'm asking to move to admit Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Any response?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 is admitted into evidence for all purposes.
Ms. Doncourt, this document reflects your potential, the potential costs and profits that would come with baking, correct?
Yes.
And the title of the second column is called Profit Before Baking, correct?
Yes.
And the title of the third column is called Baking Costs, correct?
Yes.
And the title of the fifth column is called Net Profit, correct?
That's correct.
And the title of the last column is called Estimate Overall Revenue Loss, correct?
Yes.
And at the bottom right corner of this document, it says that you estimate that you will lose $2.6 million if you bake your product, correct?
Right. As I said, baking was to eliminate any risk, but there was no risk in the first place.
Ms. Doncourt, is that a yes to my question?
Yes.
Ms. Doncourt, is that a yes?
Yes.
And Ms. Doncourt, you never baked any of your products in Lush Fertilizer, correct?
That's correct. It wasn't necessary.
In fact, you needed this money to pay off your investors, correct?
Yes, and to pay my employees.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
All right. Was it necessary to bake Drupal and your fertilizers?
Absolutely not. Our research all indicated that there was no risk in our fertilizer, and the baking would remove this risk. But since there is no risk to begin with, we did not have to bake the fertilizer.
All right. And Lush was a very successful company, regardless of whether or not you were gaining that extra money, correct?
That's correct. We're actually so successful that I said we're able to donate 10% of our profits to charity.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Ms. Weirs, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Skylar Weirs. That's W-E-I-R-S.
Okay, I'd like to begin by discussing your career. What do you do for a living?
I'm an investigative journalist focusing on the conflict between individual health and corporate policy.
And what do you specifically investigate as a journalist?
Well, my editor recently picked me to research a series of articles on modern agritech. I've written about Lush Fertilizer and Drupal specifically, particularly to question the narrative that there is a causal link between Drupal and cancer.
And how do you go about researching agricultural technology?
Well, I start by reading publications issued by various agritech companies. Then I track down and review the research studies referenced in those publications. I also track down a wealth of information maintained by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. I've engaged in this process for almost a year now, so my knowledge base incorporates general knowledge plus historical and statistical information.
And why is your perspective on agriculture important in this case?
I have vast and in-depth knowledge about agricultural products and companies, specifically regarding Lush Fertilizer and Drupal. Other than the USDA and the NASDA, I doubt anyone has the overall perspective on modern agritech that I do.
Your Honor, the defense moves to admit Skylar Weirs as an expert in agricultural technology.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. If I may I do a brief voir dire?
You may.
Ms. Weirs, you didn't go to college, correct?
That is correct. I completed high school.
You don't have any formal training on this subject, do you?
No, I chose to become a writer instead of going to college, and I'm an investigative journalist.
And you've only been doing this for a year, correct? Researching Drupal?
I've been researching Drupal for about a year, but I've been an investigative journalist for longer.
And your research is just renewing other people's research, correct?
Well, I research other people's research, so I check into other people's thoughts and opinions on Drupal, and I gather data and I analyze it.
Right, so you research other people's research, correct?
That is correct.
Question asked and answered.
Overruled.
So these researchers that you research are real experts, correct?
Well, these researchers that I research, as you say, are scientists and the producers of Drupal.
And so your knowledge is just based off of their knowledge, correct?
Correct, but however, I also form my own knowledge and opinions based off of their knowledge. I form conclusions.
You have no personal experience with the chemical itself, though, correct? You've never worked with it.
No, other than through my sister.
And you've never done any experiments of your own, correct?
No, I'm not a scientist.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to object to Ms. Beers being admitted as an expert, as she does not exhibit the requisite skills, knowledge, and experience needed to be an expert in agriculture.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. There isn't a witness that has more specialized knowledge than Ms. Weirs. I've already established the foundation for their extensive research that is based on information both from government agencies like the USDA and based on the opinions of other researchers.
Any reply to that?
Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Weirs has only been researching this topic for a year. That's about the same amount of time that high schoolers will research any other subject, and that doesn't make them experts.
Okay, the objection is overruled. Excuse me. And Ms. Weirs will be deemed qualified as an expert to testify in the field of agricultural technology, sometimes referred to as agri-tech, and may testify in the form of opinions pursuant to Rule 702.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please
Okay,
proceed.
So, Ms. Weirs, as an investigative journalist, do you work with any publishing company?
Yes, I write for the Rationalist magazine, which is a quarterly science education and advocacy magazine. It's published by the Rationalist Society, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to promoting scientific skepticism. We encourage readers to intelligently scrutinize jargon and rhetoric.
And can you explain further why scientific skepticism is important?
Of course. Skepticism is a key concept in science generally, but is particularly important in this case because agriculture has been extremely politicized and sensationalized, mostly due to the old guard of the agri-tech sector, which is spending billions of dollars to destroy Lush's reputation in order to protect their profits. Skepticism can unveil these insidious motives and help promote effective environmental and human health protection.
So let's discuss the specifics of this case. Throughout your research, have you specifically investigated the Drupal fertilizer?
Yes, I have.
And why did you decide to research Drupal?
Well, I became interested in Lush fertilizer because Drupal could be a game changer in agriculture as a safe alternative. I also admire Lush Fertilizer's charity work. Their CEO started their own charity and they donate a chunk of their profits every year to clean up water pollution.
And can you explain the differences between Drupal fertilizer and other types?
Of course, Drupal is an incredibly effective bonding agent. This is a huge revolution in agri-tech. Drupal's effective bonding means that a significantly smaller amount of fertilizer and pesticides needs to be applied to achieve the desired effect. Drupal only needs to be applied once or twice a year, whereas other grass fertilizers need to be applied 5 to 6 times per year.
So what are some of the benefits of Drupal fertilizer?
Well, less frequent use of fertilizer is important because it reduces environmental pollution. Nitrogen found in many types of fertilizer is known to contribute to sickness in humans and runoff into oceans and lakes. Not only can Drupal be used much less than other fertilizers, but it also reduces the solubility of fertilizers. So the nitrogen is less likely to contaminate water. It's also an effective pesticide, which means that it doesn't need to be used alongside other grass seed products. Drupal is unlike these other fertilizers, which is why it's so important to keep it on the market.
And are there any dangers associated with the Drupal fertilizer?
No, I'm not aware of any study that has established a causal link between Drupal and cancer with any level of certainty. If anything, fertilizer with Drupal actually protects consumers by eliminating exposure to other agricultural products that are carcinogens.
Let's now move on to discuss your relationship with the plaintiff. What is your relationship with Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my twin.
And how do you feel about testifying against a member of your family?
Well, I don't have a stereotypically close twin relationship, but we're still family, and I love Dakota. I want justice for Dakota as much as the rest of my family, but Dakota is assigning blame to the wrong company, and I felt I needed to use my knowledge to ensure that justice is actually achieved.
And I'd also like to discuss the impacts of this case on your career. Can you describe how your testimony today has affected your work as a journalist?
Honestly, despite my writing generating income, I'm freelance. So my articles have hardly been lucrative. This is because all of the prominent researchers in agriculture are bought off by major agriculture companies. As a result of this case, I've actually lost out on many potential job opportunities for having the gall to challenge some major players in agriculture.
And lastly, according to your research, is Lush fertilizer responsible for Dakota's illness?
Absolutely not.
Why do you think Dakota developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Well, Dakota was exposed to a whole host of products that contain carcinogens from their years of work in landscaping. Dakota is blaming the one product that was designed to reduce the need for continued and repeated exposure to harmful chemicals. If Haven Landscaping didn't use Lush fertilizer, Dakota might have been exposed to synthetic nitrogen far more often.
So you mentioned the Haven Landscaping Company. To your knowledge, can you elaborate on this company's involvement in this case?
Of course. This case is an issue of poor training by the owner of Haven Landscaping. Dakota was 14 when they started working with harmful chemicals. Lush fertilizer has an explicit label advising to keep the product away from minors. No company should allow its teenage employees to work with chemicals without wearing proper protective gear, at least a mask and gloves, which is advised on the label of the fertilizer. Dakota is going after the wrong company.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
You may.
So, Ms. Weirs, you have a gambling problem, don't you?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor, I'm going to the character of this, or I'm sorry, this is relevant because it goes to the bias and motive behind this character and why they may be testifying here today to gain money.
Response?
Your Honor, the plaintiff has not established sufficient foundation for this potential bias in the witness. So their line of questioning is not relevant to today's trial.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
If you would allow me to continue with my line of questioning, I assure you it will connect.
I will overrule the objection for now and allow counsel to continue on this line of questioning. If the line of questioning does not lay a sufficient foundation for the question, you may renew your objection. So please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Weirs, you have a gambling problem, correct?
I do, yes. I have struggled with sports betting in particular.
And you're in a hole right now, correct?
That is correct. I am in a bit of debt.
But you write that you write that Drupal doesn't contain cancer, correct?
That is correct. Yes, I have published
And
that.
you make money off of your publishings, right?
Yes, I'm a freelance writer, so I make money off of the articles I publish.
So if Lush loses this case, then you would be wrong. You would be discredited.
That is correct. Yes.
And you also work at Applebee's, right?
Yes, I work there part-time.
So you're just desperately trying to pay off your debts, correct?
I wouldn't say desperately. I'm working at Applebee's part-time to make ends meet while also working as a writer to pursue my passion.
But you are in a hole from gambling, right?
Yes, I am in debt.
Sorry, what was the objection?
The objection was to ask and answer. The witness already answered the question though, so we can move.
You withdraw the objection,
Yes, Your Honor.
please proceed.
Sorry, what was your answer to the question, Ms. Rears?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard the question. Everything got a little fuzzy there.
Why
I
don't
was
you-
just,
Why don't you re-ask the question, please?
sorry, just to recap, I asked if you were desperately trying to pay off debts previously.
And I said that I'm not desperate to pay off debts. I'm working to pay off debts. I'm working at Applebee's part-time to make ends meet while also pursuing my passion as a writer.
All right, and then the question that was objected to was, but you are in a hole right now, so you're not just trying to make ends meet.
Yes, that is correct. I am in debt.
So it'd be in your best interest if Lush won this case, correct? So you wouldn't be discredited?
Well, I am currently, well, yes, it is in my best interest. However, I am also losing opportunity for freelance writing opportunities because I'm going against major agriculture companies by testifying in this case on behalf.
But you are standing by your research.
Yes,
Oh, I'm so
yeah.
sorry. I didn't know to interrupt. Sorry, you are standing by your research today by defending Drupal and by defending Lush.
Yes, I am standing by my research.
All right. And Ms. Weers, pesticides are poisonous, right?
Yes, that is correct. They're designed to kill organisms such as bugs and insects that land on plants.
And Drupal is in Lush, correct?
Yes, Drupal is a bonding agent that's in Lush fertilizer.
And Drupal is a pesticide, right?
Yes, Drupal is a form of pesticide.
So anyone using Lush is using poison.
Anyone using any type of fertilizer is using poison. All different types of fertilizers have different pesticides in them.
But other companies use synthetic nitrogen, right?
Yes, but nitrogen is also harmful.
And nitrogen is in Lush fertilizer.
Yes, nitrogen is also in Lush fertilizer.
And nitrogen causes cancer, correct?
Yes, nitrogen is one of the causes.
So anyone using Lush is in danger of cancer.
Anyone using any product containing nitrogen is in danger of cancer, as long as they
But
use.
other fertilizers use synthetic nitrogen, right?
I'm not specifically certain on what type of nitrogen other companies use. All I know is that Lush uses nitrogen. I don't know whether or not other companies use nitrogen or synthetic nitrogen.
But you are an expert in agritech, so you should know.
Yes, but I don't know specifically what type of nitrogen other companies use.
And are you aware that you wrote an affidavit
Yes,
and you had the opportunity to review this affidavit and change anything if you needed?
yes,
And you were able to sign this affidavit saying that everything is true and correct?
yes, I was.
Ms. Rears, do you have a copy of your affidavit in front of you?
I do not, but I can find it. All right, now I do.
If you could please turn to line 60, read along in your head. Oh, I'm so sorry. Your Honor and members of the jury, do you have a copy of Ms. Weir's affidavit?
I do.
All right. So, Ms. Weirs, would you please read along with me on line 60 and 61 as I read aloud? The grass seed companies now replace the depleted nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen.
Okay, my mistake. I'm very sorry about that.
So just for clarification, anyone using Lush is in danger of cancer, correct?
Yes. So long because if they don't use the protective gear, then yes, they are in more danger. They are in less danger if they use the recommended protection.
But it's just recommended, correct?
Yes, you can't force anyone to wear protective gear. It's only recommended.
But you could put an adequate warning label. Couldn't
Yes,
you?
I suppose you could put an adequate warning label. However,
And Lush did not, correct?
no, they did not.
And the study that you found that Drupal causes cancer is inconclusive, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So Lush fertilizer is not safe, correct?
I'm sorry, could you cut out for me? Could you repeat that question?
Lush fertilizer is not safe, correct?
Yes, as I've said before, Lush fertilizer is not safe for people who, and it's less safe if you don't wear the proper protective wear.
But even with the protective gear, Lush
Even
is
with-
not safe.
Even with protective gear, Lush is not 100% safe. No fertilizer is 100% safe.
No further questions, John.
Redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, can you explain why Lush fertilizer, to your knowledge, does not include synthetic nitrogen in its fertilizer? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
You're on mute. Can you click on your, there you go.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry, it wasn't it wasn't helping. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. To your knowledge, why does Lush fertilizer not include synthetic nitrogen in its formula?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Could you I'm hold on.
Okay. Do you remember preparing a witness statement for today's case?
I do. One moment.
And you signed this statement indicating that it was true and accurate.
Yes, I did.
If we all have a copy already pulled up from Cross, I would ask everyone to refer to that. If you could look at lines 60 through 62 to refresh your recollection, and then I can repeat the question when you're ready. And line 65 through 66 as well. My apologies.
You said line 60 through 62?
Yeah, and 66 through 65.
Okay. All right.
I'll repeat the question. To your knowledge, why does Lush Fertilizer not incorporate synthetic nitrogen into its fertilizer formula?
Well, nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer, and nitrogen is a soluble substance, so it soaks deeply into the soil. And the ecological effects of nitrogen runoff are well known and include dead zones in lakes and oceans, such as in the Gulf of Mexico, which the CEO of Lush Fertilizer has contributed money to charitably to help reduce the size of. So Lush Fertilizer doesn't include nitrogen in their fertilizers because of the severe ecological effects.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand. May I begin, Your Honor?
You may.
Good evening, Dr. Devin Williams. Please state your name and pronouns for the record. Spell your last name as well.
Devin Williams, Willims, and pronouns are she, her.
What do you do for a living?
I lead the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer.
How did your career start?
I started at Lush about 10 years ago.
Have you gotten any promotions since?
Yes, actually, I've been leading the toxicology lab for 7 years.
Where did you get your education?
My education from undergrad through was completed at Colorado State University, Fort Collins.
And what about training?
I did a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
What state did you get your certifications from?
I have certifications in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah.
Your Honor, may I share my screen to show what has been marked as Exhibit 9?
Well, why don't you ask some questions about it first, since I think showing it would be an indication that it's been admitted.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to object for lack of foundation.
To the lack of foundation for the request to put the exhibit on share screen?
Yes, Your Honor. The opposing counsel hasn't asked their witness any questions about this exhibit or why they may be familiar with it, so it shouldn't be presented to them at this time.
Okay, fair enough. That's sustained. That was my point as well. Go ahead and refer the witness to the exhibit, but do not put it on the share screen yet.
Okay, so can you look at Exhibit 9, Dr. Devin Williams?
Yes.
Do you recognize Exhibit 9?
Yes, I do.
What is this document?
This is a copy of my CV.
Is this a true
copy of my certification?
Okay. Is this a true and accurate representation of this document?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, we move to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 will be admitted for all purposes.
What do you do as a toxicologist?
I research and evaluate test results to determine the fate and effects of potentially toxic chemicals by using biomolecular and biochemical markers. I know how to tell if the substance is going to harm the average human and how to neutralize that harm if it does happen.
How did you get promoted to leading the toxicology lab?
I started off filling in as a technician as the turnover was beginning to impact testing timeliness. Later then, I was promoted to lead the lab, largely to oversee work on environmental impact.
Your Honor, the defense moves to enter Devin Williams as an expert toxicologist.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor. I will address the deficiencies of this witness in my cross-examination.
This witness is admitted as an expert as a toxicologist and may testify through opinion evidence pursuant to Rule 702.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is Drupal?
Drupal is an agent put in fertilizer that adds nutrients and enhances the effectiveness of the soil, all while being environmentally friendly by avoiding eutrophication and also very cost effective.
What's eutrophication?
Eutrophication is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural runoff.
How do some fertilizers cause eutrophication?
Unused nitrogen from fertilizers gets converted to nitrates by bacteria in the soil. Then those nitrates are carried into streams and lakes by run and irrigation runoff.
What are the effects of eutrophication?
Eutrophication is extremely dangerous. The nitrate accumulates in the water, leading to dense algal bloom. It's fatal for fish and very dangerous for humans.
How does Lush fertilizer prevent eutrophication?
Drupal binds to the ingredients in the fertilizer and to the grass or other plants on which the fertilizer is sprayed. This means that less fertilizer is sprayed and less washes away into the soil. This disrupts nitrate pollution from the very beginning.
If Drupal is much environmentally safer alternative to traditional fertilizers, why is it banned in France?
It is banned not only in France, but also in the EU. This is not because of cancer risk, but because no new fertilizer formulations may be used that contribute more than incidental nitrate accumulation in lab tests.
How does Drupal have more nitrate accumulation than normal?
If the right chemicals are added to a petri dish, you will get as much nitrate as a normal fertilizer. However, in real world circumstances, Drupal greatly reduces nitrate accumulation.
Does the use of Drupal cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, Drupal does not cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
How do you know?
We've done many studies, and the data shows that users of fertilizers with Drupal do not have an elevated risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma compared to users of fertilizers that don't have Drupal.
Why do you keep comparing Lush fertilizer to other fertilizers?
It's comparing farm laborers, casual gardeners, and people who don't garden at all, which will all have different exposure levels to the fertilizer used.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, how long have you worked at Lush Fertilizer?
For 7 years.
And you've spent most of that time developing Drupal, haven't you?
Yes.
You've worked very hard on it, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you're very proud of the products that you've been able to create?
Can you repeat that for me?
Are you proud of the product that you've been able to create?
Yes.
Do you believe that it's valuable?
What do you mean by that?
Do you believe that the product, do you believe that Drupal and Lush Fertilizer is valuable to the world or to people in any way?
Yes, Drupal has many environmental factors that include reducing nitrate pollution and stops algal blooms, which kill fish and lead to irrigation runoff, and also contain bacteria that can harm humans.
And again, you've worked on this for, I believe, 7 years, you said, yes?
I believe so.
So if a product that you worked on for 7 years was found to be dangerous to people in any way, that would harm your credibility significantly, wouldn't it?
But if you were looking at Dakota, who unfortunately was affected by Drupal, there is not much that can back it up that says Drupal is the cause of that.
I'm sorry, Dr. Williams, I wasn't asking specifically about Ms. Weirs. I was just asking in general, if a product that you worked on for the past 7 years was found to be carcinogenic or in any other way harmful to people who consume it, would that harm your reputation?
Well, of course it would, but I have faith that it won't. We will reach a conclusion that Drupal does not cause cancer. It would be a shame if that were incorrect. But it also reduces the positive environmental impact that this product would have all over the world.
So that's a yes, it would harm your credibility.
Oh, definitely. Although it isn't cancerous, so
So that's a yes.
yes,
And you, as you said, you work at Lush Fertilizer, right?
Mhm.
And they pay you?
that is correct.
And if a product that your company made was found to be harmful, would that be significantly harmful to them as well?
Of course, if a product were harming our the people using our fertilizer, that would definitely harm us. But we know that Drupal, which is put in our fertilizer, is not harmful. Otherwise, we would not have given it to people to use that in their fertilizer.
And if your company was harmed, that could have a monetary impact on you too, right? Since they pay you, as you just said?
That's correct.
So Drupal being found carcinogenic in this case would harm both your credibility and your monetary income, right?
Yes, that's correct. But there's nothing to back it up that does say that Drupal is harmful to humans.
But again, it would harm your credibility and your income.
Definitely.
And Dr. Williams, you had a chance to hear all of the other witnesses' testimonies today, right?
Yes,
Did you hear Skylar Rear's testimony in particular?
I did.
Did you hear Skylar Rear's talk about how there is nitrogen in Lush fertilizer?
Yes, I did hear about that.
And I assume you were already familiar with that fact since you've worked for Lush for so long?
That is correct.
And I assume as a toxicologist, you were also aware of the fact that Ms. Weirs testified to, which is that nitrogen is in and of itself carcinogenic.
That is true.
You are also aware that Drupal binds to nitrogen?
Yes,
Drupal makes things sticky, right? Makes them stick to living organisms.
that is correct.
Would you consider humans a living organism?
They are a living organism.
So Drupal would stick to people, wouldn't it?
Yes, that is why you wear your protective gear as recommended.
And therefore, Drupal would make the carcinogenic element nitrogen stick to people, wouldn't it?
If you're not wearing the correct gear, that is correct.
But it would make a carcinogen stick to people?
Possibly.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Plaintiff, are you ready to present closing arguments?
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Members of the jury, in just a few minutes, you're going to be handed a set of jury instructions, which will essentially ask you to evaluate whether we have done three things today. One, that my client, Ms. Weirs, was damaged. Two, that damage was caused by a product created by the party opponent, Lush Fertilizer. And three, that my client was harmed as a product of Lush Fertilizer's negligence. We've proved all of these three things to you today. One, that Ms. Weirs was damaged. Absolutely no one in this courtroom has been able to contest that. You watched Ms. Weirs squirm in her chair throughout her entire direct and cross-examination as a product of the harm that has been dealt to her. Two, that harm was caused by Lush Fertilizer. We've confirmed that for you today as well. You heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in this field with more than 2 decades of experience, about how he performed a study that proved conclusively that Drupal is a carcinogenic compound and that people who use it in the same way that Ms. Weirs did are 10 times more likely to get cancer. And three, that this harm was caused as a product of Lush Fertilizer's negligence. We've proven that to you today as well. You heard from Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush Fertilizer, who talked to you about how during their time at the company, they discovered a study that had already suggested that one of the compounds in Drupal was carcinogenic, that they relayed that information to their employer, and that their employer thought that it was concerning enough to perform a study on it. You heard the results of that study, that one of Lush Fertilizer's own scientists told them that not only could it be carcinogenic, but that it could also cause, in particular, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, coincidentally, the very same illness that Miss Weirs has today. And you heard how the company's only reaction, you heard how Lush Fertilizer's only reaction to this news was to keep it in-house, was to prevent it from getting out. We have proven all three of those things for you today, but that's not all. We've also proven to you that in addition to Drupal in and of itself being carcinogenic, Lush Fertilizer contains yet another compound, nitrogen, that is also a carcinogen. And you heard from the defense's own witnesses, Skylar Weirs in particular, about how Lush Fertilizer does not contain a sufficient warning to their customers that the product is carcinogenic, even though they know that it contains a known carcinogen. So directly or indirectly, Drupal caused my client's cancer, both being carcinogenic in and of itself and making a second carcinogen stick to her. It caused her cancer. And although Lush Fertilizer knew that it had two options to protect my client, that it could either bake the product and remove all possibility of it being carcinogenic at all, or they could simply put a warning label on it, they chose not to do either. They chose not to take whatever portion of their income that it would have taken to bake the product or to put a label on it to protect their clients. They chose to prioritize profits over people. And they're continuing to do so. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all.
Defense, closing argument?
Yes. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor and members of the jury, despite the plaintiff's passion for music, the plaintiff's theory of this case is off-key. Between the plaintiff's failure to comply with the safety precautions labeled on the product, the lack of scientific evidence, and the opportunistic motives, it is clear that Lush Fertilizer is not in any way responsible for Dakota Weir's unfortunate illness. Today, you heard from Dakota Weirs herself. Dakota Weirs has testified that she was only 14 years old, a child, when she began her job at Haven Landscaping. Lush Fertilizer's label clearly states to keep the products out of the hands of children. Dakota has admitted that they use Lush Fertilizer without a mask, long pants, or long sleeves. The product explicitly recommends the use of protective gear. Dakota's blatant disregard for explicitly advised safety measures makes clear that Dakota was not reasonably expected to use the product, and that Lush took every safety precaution necessary. Moreover, Dakota has testified that she used several other agricultural products during her work. Opposing counsel has made the claim that these are recommendations and not requirements, and that is why Dakota did not follow them. However, if their argument is that no one listens to recommendations, there is no reason why a warning on the label would improve the safety of the product. Additionally, despite Lush Fertilizer's meticulous efforts to ensure the safety of their product, fertilizer with chemical Drupal has not been proven to be a carcinogen or dangerous in any way. The plaintiff presented Carson Durst today, who attempted to claim both that Drupal was dangerous and that Lush Fertilizer did not implement proper safety precautions. However, Carson Durst isn't a scientist, is rather barely an intern that did absolutely no research themselves. Carson Durst is also extremely biased against the defendant as an employee for a rival company. The plaintiff also attempted to claim that Drupal is unsafe with the testimony of Casey Rogers. But as Devin Williams has explained, Casey Rogers' study was conducted without a lab. It was never published. It was never peer-reviewed. It was never replicated, and it did not control for confounding variables. Opposingly, today you also heard testimony from a representative of the defendant, Lush Fertilizer CEO Blake Doncourt. Blake Dogcourt explained that her company took every possible measure to ensure the safety and efficacy of their product. After several toxicology tests, the team found nothing warranting further safety warnings or baking. The Environmental Protection Agency, an independent government agency, agreed. Skylar Weirs and Dr. Devin Williams corroborated this testimony, concluding that Lush fertilizer is actually the safest product on the market. Opposing counsel has claimed that nitrogen is a carcinogen, but due to Drufo's remarkable chemical bonding abilities, it needs to be applied much less frequently and in much smaller quantities. This limits exposure to Drufo and nitrogen, making it much safer for both humans and the environment. That also means that it's extremely unlikely that out of the multitude of agricultural products that Dakota was exposed to, that Lush fertilizer caused the illness, because Dakota would have been exposed to it at much lower levels than any other product. They claim that Blake Dogcourt is motivated by profit over people, but they haven't proven that Drufo is dangerous. And this is also untrue. Blake Dogcourt donates profits to prevent environmental degradation. And as you can see on Exhibit 8, Lush still made millions in profit, even with the calculated expenses. The burden of proof in this case is by the preponderance of evidence, meaning that each party is responsible for proving that their claims are more probably true than not. Per the jury instructions, it's the plaintiff's responsibility to prove that the defendant manufactured fertilizer with Drufo, that the defendant was negligent in preventing risk, that the plaintiff was reasonably expected to use the product, and that the plaintiff's damages were caused by the defendant's negligence. The plaintiff has not met that burden today. The defendant was not negligent, conducting a series of tests to ensure the safety of the fertilizer. The plaintiff was also not reasonably expected to use the product as a child that shirked safety responsibilities. This simply elucidates that Dakota Weirs is going after the wrong company, Haven Landscaping, which failed to enforce proper safety protocols amongst its child employee, is the party that should be held responsible. Throughout the plaintiff's off-key, assumptive logic, irrational and unreliable purportedly scientific claims, and blatant bias and opportunism, it is clear that they have not met their burden of proof. We ask you to not ruin the public image of a benevolent company that produces a fundamentally safe and ethical product, a company that even donates revenue to charity and sets a precedent in the industry for environmental protection. Thus, we ask you, the jury, to render a verdict in favor of Lush fertilizer. Thank you.
Counsel, did you, Mr. Jones, did you want to use, well, do you have any extra time from your closing argument that you wish to use for a rebuttal?
Your Honor, would you mind if I asked my teammates and opposing counsel to let me know how much time I have left, as I'm not currently in the room with anybody. I don't have a timekeeper.
Yes, please. Could we get a time check on how much time, if any, is left in the plaintiff's closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. He has 1 minute and 27 seconds remaining.
You may use that pursuant to the pretrial stipulations, if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Benevolence. Opposing counsel's argument against their having caused a child to get cancer is that the company they're defending is benevolent. Members of the jury, we have, in contrast to what opposing counsel has attempted to argue, we have shown all of the requisite requirements required for our burden of proof today. We have shown you that Dakota Weirs was a person expected to use the product. She was an employee of a company that required her to use it. We have shown you that Lush Fertilizer produced that product. Even they do not contest that. We've shown you that the harm caused to my client was done by Lush Fertilizer, again, with testimony from an expert in his field who has worked in it for 20 years, who performed a study that confirmed that fact. And we have shown you that the company knew that their product had an ability to cause harm to my client and that they chose not to act to prevent it. And yet opposing counsel's argument is that their company is benevolent, that because it does things for the environment, it doesn't have to care about the fact that it causes cancer to people like Dakota, people that opposing counsel themselves labeled as children. Members of the jury, this is a prime example of corporate greed, of a company prioritizing profits over people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the close of the formal presentations today. I would ask everybody to sit back and relax while the scoring panelists complete their duties here, and ask each of the scorers, when you finish, to signal to Elizabeth that you're done. And we'll move on to the post-trial phase here. While we're doing that, I will tell you that normally in live presentations of mock trial tournaments, what I do at this point is I ask all of the student participants to stand up and turn around and face the gallery and give the people in the gallery a round of applause. And the reason I do that is because, as I mentioned in my introductory comments, I've been with this program for a long time in just about every capacity there is in the program. And I know how hard the students work, and I know how important to the quality of these presentations the students' support system is. And that's the people in the gallery. And I don't know how to have people stand up and turn around and applaud the gallery on Zoom. But I appreciate your indulging me when I thank you, the people that would be in the gallery if we had one, for your participation. And it's evident in the quality of the presentation by the students. And I'm not denigrating at all the work that the students do, because I know you all have worked very hard at this. So I thank you from a personal standpoint, both the student participants and their supporters, for your involvement and dedication during the mock trial season. So thank you very much from me personally, all of you. The next phase that we're going to go into is brief critiques, feedback, chat backs, whatever you want to call it, from the scoring panelists. And I will, depending on what the panelists say, I may have a comment or two as well following them. But when they finish their scoring duties and have submitted their score sheets, I will ask them to speak for no more than a couple of minutes apiece about their impressions, plaudits, kudos, whatever you want to call it, for this performance today. Right, Elizabeth, where are we on the scoring process? Can you tell?
Your Honor, we are waiting on one additional scoring panelist to submit their scores.
Okay, let me know when that happens and we'll proceed with the chat back.
Your Honor, would you like to begin with the panelists who have already submitted scores in the meantime?
Well, I think the rules are we need to wait until all the panelists have submitted before we begin the critiques.
Understood.
Much as I realize that would speed this thing up a little bit.
And panelists, go ahead and turn on your cameras when you have completed your scoring. That way we know you are ready for feedback.
Okay, looks like we're ready. Emma, why don't you lead it off?
Thank you. As an initial point, I just want to say this is my first time volunteering for this program, and I am so impressed with the work that you all clearly have put in. You've all come across so well. You've made my job very, very hard. And I do litigation as a career. I spend all day doing it. You all spend maybe a few hours a week. I know, coming down to this competition, you put a whole lot more time in, but I'm so excited to see all of you in the future and see, I hope you're on the same side of the bench as me, because I'll be extremely intimidated if I have to face against you at trial someday. With that being said, your grasp of the facts, your grasp of the law, and your grasp of the rules of evidence was just so fun to watch. And again, I can't say it enough. I'm so impressed. My critique is, I think maybe some of you forget how well you know this and how practiced you are at this. You don't need to read your scripts. You don't need to read your questions because you know them so well. And so it is noticeable when you begin to read some of your questions and you don't need it. It's a safety net that you don't need. So going forward, I would recommend keeping those notes as far away from you as you can. Because again, trust your preparation. I apologize for this one. She found the lock on the door. But again, thank you for letting me be a part of this. I congratulate you all.
Can we hear from your partner there?
Do you have anything to say? Do you want to tell them your name? She doesn't. She was only impressed.
Okay, as impressed, I presume.
She's learning a lot.
Okay, thank you. Brittany?
Yeah, thank you, Judge. I don't want to repeat too much of what Emma said, but I was equally impressed. Clear that you guys put a lot of time and preparation and hard work into this, and it really paid off, I think. I thought there was really good pacing with the questions, and I appreciated that in the cross. I felt like a lot of you were persistent in your questions and getting your points across, and I thought that was very effective. You were all very professional in terms of handling the technical difficulties and all the things that come up with doing this via Zoom. In terms of a critique, I would say also that, echo what Emma said, that you are really well prepared, and sometimes you want to be careful not to be scripted and make sure that your conversational and questions come across as more natural. And I also thought the opening statements, because that was the first thing we hear, that could have been a little bit more emphatic and forceful, and maybe just like a little bit more confident. But overall, great job.
All right, thank you. Who was our last scoring
Your Honor,
panelist?
the final panelist had to drop off.
Okay.
But
all right. Well, I'll go ahead. I agree with the statements of the scoring panelists. This was impressive. I would like to be a little more specific, though, and I'll share with you that one of the aspects of this of these trials that I really enjoy, and I done a lot of it myself and heard a lot of it myself as an arbitrator. And that's cross-examination. And I just enjoy the battle, the back and forth, the adjustments, the sometimes thinly veiled aggression that you see in cross-examination. And that's particularly true in that I enjoy cross-examination of experts. And experts in real life, I'm sure your coaches know this, that our lawyers, they tend to be confident people. And one of the experts this evening, today, I think was particularly so, and that was Sophia, as Dr. Devin Williams. Is your screen on? There you are. Okay. Yeah, you did. You played the part to a T. You were confident. You were maybe close to being cocky, but not too cocky. And that is the definition of a good expert witness. You did a great job of portraying some. I suspect you had good coaching in that regard, but you did it very well. You withstood some excellent cross-examination. And that gets to the other part of my comment. Mr. Jones, you did a great job in cross-examining a very good expert witness. You made some good points, good leading questions, good persistence in your questions. When Sophia didn't quite answer a question that you asked it again. And that's what you need to do on cross-examination. If you know what you're looking for and you don't get it, you keep after it up to a point. And you kept after it just very correctly. You didn't get too aggressive, but you were persistent against, as I said, a good witness. And you're picking up on the nitrogen testimony and asking cross-examination questions of Sophia after the prior questioning that had occurred on nitrogen was excellent. It was very much an appropriate emphasis of that issue, of the presence of nitrogen in this product and how dangerous it was, and how that undercut the credibility that the defense was trying to create through all their benevolence. And that was a word you used a lot in your closing as well. So great job on your part also. I could say things about other participants, but it's late. We've had technical problems today, which extended this process. I think we're late. I hope we're not the last one to finish. But let me say to all, good job. I particularly enjoyed the parts I mentioned, but this was enjoyable to me, again, on a personal basis, and it's part of why I do this year after year and why I enjoy it so much, presentations like this. So thank you all. Good luck to you, to both teams in the rest of the tournament. And with that, Elizabeth, do you have anything you want to say?
No, Your Honor, just congratulations to all of the participants and thank you for our volunteers. Your time is very valuable. We appreciate you.
All right, well, thank you all and good night. I probably won't see you tomorrow, any of you, but again, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Also, before we hop off, if I can issue a quick thank you to basically everybody who was here today. Thank you so much for sticking with all of us. we got the chance to do a scrimmage like 2 weeks ago, and we developed a really fun setup for it where we had 2 classrooms set aside at our school with cameras going, hooked up to computers so we could participate and kind of simulate a real courtroom. And then at some point in the last week, our tech team disabled Zoom on all of our school computers. So we were forced to do it from our phones today at school, and we go to school in a steel-walled building. So our connection is awful there. So all the audio and video issues that you saw were because of that. And I think we may have gotten a little bit thrown off because we had to adapt our setup so quickly, but thank you so much for sticking with us. And it was just really so much fun. So thank you. And all of you guys did great on the other team.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
You guys really
Thank you
were
all
amazing.
again.
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye.